And thank you. And of course, the purpose of a sounder is to simply kindly and perhaps nicely say, hey, wake up and please pay attention. And I hope that will be something you will do in the next 15 minutes, because I'd like to share something that I think might be fun, might be important, and perhaps it might be good for you. So thank you. This is Interesting Ideas. My name is Stan Houston, and we come to you almost every day during the week, whenever we can, and perhaps we put a program or two on the weekend. We love to do this, and that's part of what life is all about for me, and so we continue to do it, and I hope we do it well from time to time. I oftentimes say, and those of you who've heard me in many of my presentations say, Friday should be a future day. Use it as a day to think about your future, to think about being, hey, what I want, not only for the weekend, but next week, and perhaps for the rest of my life. Try and get undistracted by all of the stuff going on today, and thoughtfully and mindfully, maybe even prayerfully, think about where you want life to be, if you are graced enough to be able to continue it on for a while. Friday is a time to think about the future. Well, we're going to try and do a little bit of that, and maybe you'll spend time, and particularly right now, because the world is in a mess, and it always is in some kind of mess, but obviously those of us who are looking at the world today say it's in a bigger mess than usual, and a lot of people are wondering about, here we just are getting through the COVID thing, which was devastating. And now we'd like perhaps see if we could, then all of a sudden this economic recession hits, and there's war in Ukraine and other parts of the world, and it seems that we're going to have to put up with another continuing way of life that perhaps it really isn't what we want. And so what do we do with our future when things are not particularly looking good for many people? Well, that's part of what we are about, is to help you from time to time say, I can do things better because I've got some ideas, because I share some ideas, because I'm always on the lookout for good ideas. And hopefully I have the courage to do something about what I learn and what comes to me in terms of other people teach me and what experience teaches me. What can I do to live better, and to live better not just for my sake, but for the sake of others? What I want to do today is I want to share a prayer that I knew, but I learned it differently. A very important prayer. In fact, some of you have heard it before, but for the future. This is a prayer for you and for me in the future, and it's something that I think you will find, in some cases, rather delightful in the way it's put, and perhaps useful to you, as indeed you think about and perhaps pray for the future. That's the program for today. We'll try and keep it kind of short because you're busy, but this is our Future Friday flowing into the weekend edition of Interesting Ideas. The program begins right now. Well, we're back. Well, of course, many people know, particularly people in North America and in the Western world and many of the parts of the world where there's a little bit more affluence than others. One of the things that we're continually reminded is, hey, think about your retirement. Now, this is a totally new idea in the entire history of the world. It really actually began in the last 100 years. It started somewhat in Germany, where they put into place a Social Security plan where when you reached a certain age, 65, the government would give you money and you could live well. Well, of course, that wasn't terribly generous because the average lifespan at that time was about 45, but people thought, well, isn't this good? This is something to look forward to. And of now, in many parts of the world, there are social security systems that the governments of the world have put in place, kind of a guaranteed pension for you. If you weren't able to do it yourself, you would have at least enough to live on, thanks to the social security net that was there for those of us as we got older in life and perhaps when we could no longer or no longer wanted to keep working. Most people in life have never had such a thing, and many people today still have no such thing. They just have to keep working and contributing and trying to get some compensation for as long as they live. And hopefully they won't run out of money before they die. Well, when it comes to Social Security, great. But when it comes to sometimes doing the retirement planning, that we are less good at. Most people, when they reach the age where they might like to stop working, they can't afford to. And so that's why there are so many people, even in their later stages of life, are still working, some because they want to, and some because they find joy in it. And that's great. But some of them, many of them, are doing it because they have to have a little extra income, because they need to kind of supplement the income they have. Well, I didn't do real well on that myself because of a number of situations, but that happened. However, I did do well in one other thing. When I was making my plans for life, as I was getting into the second stage of my life, I said, make sure that if I get to keep on working, or if I have to keep on working, that it will be something I get to do, something I like to do, something I love to do. That even though I may not want the hours and the responsibility that go along with that work, it at least is some work that I'm good at, and I can still make some compensation and some supplementary income by doing. As long as I'm physically able and mentally able, I can do that kind of work. And hopefully when that no longer happens, that perhaps there'll be a way that I will be taken care of by good friendship and good family and God's good grace. But that is something I have to trust in rather than know for sure. But that's true for all of us. Very few of us know what the future holds for sure. That old line of John Lennon, life is what happened when you're making other plans. And that's been true for us. As I pointed out to you, I'm now in the state of Carolina after living in Arizona, where I thought that's where I would continue my retirement living, and that would be my place that I would perhaps, that's where I would finally come to a restful end. Well, we're back in a place we've never been before. We did not return to Minnesota. We returned to North Carolina for the first time. And we are enjoying it. Many good people, many opportunities, but it was simply because we had to be here to help out with our family and our grandson, as there are special needs. Certainly that wasn't in the plan, but it's what is working out, and we are going to make it work. And we're finding that perhaps we're going to find that it may be the best of all possible worlds, even though we didn't plan it that way. Well, going that way, I'm going to do an interesting segue, because here's what happened. One of the programs that I would love to do, based on what has happened to me in the last few years, one of the podcasts that I would like to produce, because I now have a company that produces podcasts, and people listen to my podcasts and the ones that I help others do, and it goes all around the world. Lucky me. Really true. Lucky me that I get to be involved in that kind of work. But I'd love to do a program on how to pray. And that's become quite important to me. And I'm trying to learn that, and I wanted to produce a podcast on how to pray. And I was talking to my friend Daniel Messner, a longtime friend and even a client who took me seriously as a coach about 30 plus years ago, and he's recently retired, and he had an incredible, successful career as a pastor and a minister, and he's even done some of his retirement planning far better than me. But when I was asking him to be a part of the programming on podcasting about prayers, he said, well, Stan, you know what you ought to do? First of all, you say you're talking about the Lord's Prayer, which, of course, almost all Christians have familiarity with. They say it oftentimes in their worship and in their church. And he said, Stan, go back to the Message and read and say the Lord's Prayer as Eugene Peterson said it in the book that he doesn't call it the Bible, but it's a new interpretation, perhaps translation of the Bible, in his words, along with the help of many others, but to make it very modern and very contemporary. Not that there's anything wrong with some of the beautiful and wonderful language that flows out in English in the 16th century, King James on, but a very contemporary version about things that are eternally true, but perhaps you can say them in sharper and more significant ways for people who are living and trying to make it happen in the world today. He said, Stan, go to Matthew 6 and read the Lord's Prayer and the story of the context, and you'll find something very unique. And, of course, I've used that, and I said, well, how did I miss this? But here's what I missed, and I want to, as we finish up here on Friday and finish up the week, to read it to you. Here's supposedly Jesus is talking to his friends. He said, hey, be especially careful when you're trying to be good so that you don't make a performance out of it. Okay, it might be good theater, but the God who made you won't be applauding. When you do something for someone else, don't call attention to yourself. Oh, you've seen them in action, I'm sure. You know, the play actors, I call them. Treating prayer meetings and a street corner alike as a stage, acting compassionate as long as someone is watching, playing to the crowds. They get applause, true, but that's all they get. When you help someone out, don't think about how it looks. Just do it, quietly and unobtrusively. That is the way your God, who conceived you in love, wants it to work behind the scenes to help you out. And when you come before God, don't turn that into a theatrical production either. You know, all those people making regular shows out of their prayers, hoping for stardom. Do you think God sits in a box seat? Here's what I want you to do. Find a quiet, secluded place so you won't be tempted to role play before God. Just be there as simply and honestly as you can manage. Okay. The focus will shift from you to God, and you'll begin to sense His grace. You see, the world is full of so-called prayer warriors who are really prayer ignorant. They're full of formulas and programs and advice, peddling techniques for getting what you want from God. Don't fall for that nonsense. This is your Father you are dealing with, and He knows better than you what you need. With a God like this loving you, you can pray very simply like this. And here he goes. Our Father in heaven, reveal who you are. Set the world right. Do what's best. As above, so do it right here below. Keep us alive with 3 square meals. Keep us forgiven with you and forgiving others. Keep us safe from ourselves and the devil. You're in charge. You can do anything you want. You're ablaze in beauty. Yes, yes, yes. And that's the prayer. It's different. It's unique. It's powerful. And combined with the traditional, I think when you put those together, you get a whole new sense of perhaps what we should all be about. So, thank you for listening. Just 15 minutes today. I hope you'll take some time to look some of this stuff up. Think about your future. As you are thinking about perhaps retirement, think about perhaps doing something that you might want to do for the rest of your life. And then think about that prayer and perhaps how you can be refreshed in saying it, and perhaps how you can find new power and insight, strength, and maybe even a way to smile when you say the prayer in new and powerful ways. Just an interesting idea. I'm Stan Houston.
'Tis a gift to be simple, 'tis a gift to be free, 'tis a gift to come down where we ought to be. And when we find ourselves in the place just right, 'twill be in the valley of love and delight.
And that's the deal. That's the deal for today. I'm going to take the weekend off. Might come up with something, but probably not. So you enjoy the weekend. As I say, the weekend is time for finish up some of the work and then find time for rest and relaxation, reflection, and worship. And then, of course, toward the end, prayerfully and thoughtfully get ready to meet the marketplace and do the world once again on Monday. May the next few days be a blessed time for you. I'm Stan. Bye for now.